All right, this is day 14 of me picking an album from this filter and working out to it and giving it a review. This is a series I've been doing called Muscle Music. We're doing something a little bit different today. I'm doing a nature walk, so let's see how Jagged Little Pill does on this nice little walk.
And I'm here to remind you of the mess you left when you...
All right, we're back from our nature walk. We did almost 4 miles. You saw some of those beautiful shots. So here are my thoughts on Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. So I definitely knew who Alanis Morissette was. She's kind of this cultural icon that got this upstart in the 90s. This album came out in 1995 and definitely sounds like it. It kind of precedes her in a little bit. It has its own Broadway play, I'm pretty sure, named after the album. So she's definitely her own cult of personalities. And I really only knew the singles going into this, or at least the bigger tracks off of this, which were Ironic, Hand in My Pocket, and You Ought to Know. And unfortunately, those are probably still my favorite tracks off of this album, but those are the only ones I really knew going into this. And she definitely deserves the praise she gets from this album. She's a great singer, a great songwriter. She definitely has a lot of great lyricism on this album. There is one kind of aspect I'm not a huge fan of, and that's that kind of 90s-esque vocal delivery, that kind of, yeah, that they did on like the Cranberries. They did that a lot. And she does it a fair bit on this, but at least like her vocal placement and her range and, the other parts of her actual vocal chops are pretty fantastic. Like, I feel like she unnecessarily adds a lot of A into every word she says, kind of like an Eddie Vedder or like that kind of grunge sound that was very popular in the early 90s, which makes sense given the placement of this album. And a lot of the album kind of falls under that same style that she's known for, that pop rock aesthetic or that pop balladry that we also hear on the other half of this album. I prefer when she gets a bit more rocky, a bit more loud, a bit more radio friendly. The ballads were really not doing it for me, especially because they were, mid-90s ballads. Like, a lot of the B-sides on this album reek of Butterfly Clips and Frosted Tips. I also want to give a quick shout out to the You Ought to Know remix, or the blend as it's called, on the last track of this album, which kind of sucks as its own, it's basically just You Ought to Know again, but there's kind of like a hidden audio track of her doing this a cappella, this beautiful delivery. It was just really fantastic and just caught me off guard completely. But overall, I think it was a pretty great album. Unsurprisingly, my favorite tracks have to go to You Ought to Know, Hand in My Pocket, as well as Ironic. If I didn't have to go with one of those tracks, I'd probably go with You Learn, was probably my favorite one of the tracks I didn't know. But yeah, she definitely deserves the credit she's given and all of her merits. I think if I gave it a rating, it would probably have to be a high 7 to a low 8. I think I'm sitting right in that region. Leave me your request in the comments unless this guy gets banned. Bye!